Good deal. Well, we're right here at the top of the hour, so I'll go ahead and kick us off here. Welcome, everyone. We are so happy to have you joining us here today. So welcome to Buy versus Build, Unlocking the Right Path for Your Training Tech. I'll be your host today. My name is Elizabeth Mohr, and I've been with Rustici Software for about 4 years, and I kind of bring a unique perspective to this world of e-learning and training from my decade of experience as a classroom teacher. So now, as a client success manager at Rustici, I'm really spending my days collaborating with our customers and helping to solve the complex challenges that they're facing with their training and as they're building out these learning ecosystems. I'm super excited today to partner with some of the incredible folks leading the team at Ethena. I've worked with Ethena for the past several years, and I'm really thrilled that we've got both Roxanne and Anne here to share their experiences and their expertise. So I'll let them introduce themselves.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having us. I'm Roxanne Petraeus. I'm one of the co-founders of Ethena and the CEO. And I am less close to the Rustici relationship in terms of how Ethena really leverages this software. Anne's going to be the expert there. But from the build versus buy perspective, I can bring that we have folks who leverage what Ethena has built, which we can talk about in a little bit, to supercharge their training platforms if they don't want to sort of stitch together a bunch of solutions. So I'm really happy to bring that perspective to the conversation. And also, apologies, I am fighting a cold, and so I'm doing my best to be audible and not too nasally in this conversation. So thank you for everyone's patience.
And thank you, Roxanne, for making my introduction a little bit easier. So nice to meet you all. I'm Anne. I am Roxanne's business partner and our CTO. As Roxanne hinted at, I am an engineer by background. I am hoping that I've got some fellow engineers on the call, and we'll look forward to talking about the sort of technical perspective, both in some of the details and from a technical leadership perspective in the buy versus build journey. Elizabeth, I will pass things back to you.
Cool. Thanks, Anne. Another quick kind of housekeeping note. We have both Tara and Alicia from the Rustici marketing team. They're supporting us behind the scenes, so they'll be sharing out some helpful links and some information in the chat. We'd love for this to be interactive, so please feel free to drop any questions that you've got along the way, and we'll save some time for Q&A at the end, so big thanks to them. Before we dig in too much, I'd love to know a bit more about our audience today. I've already asked you where you're from, but I kind of know what roles you play within your organizations. What perspectives are we hearing? Are you all in leadership like Roxanne and Anne? Are you more technical, an engineer, developer background? Or are you customer facing like myself? I just love to hear what types of folks we have here joining us today. Cool. So first up, I just want to acknowledge that it's a bit of a tangled world out there. You're not alone if you're feeling unsure about how to approach building out your learning ecosystem or defining the right path for your training tech. And we're here to kind of help untangle that with you today. We're talking with folks making these decisions every single day, and they're important ones. So our goal is to help kind of pull back the curtain and show these real world considerations for buying versus building a solution. And I'm seeing we've got some technical folks, some LMS managers, learning and development design, digital strategy. Awesome. So we've got a great variety of perspectives here. That's awesome. In preparing for today, I really wanted to start out with just some questions to kind of get your mind going, kind of plant this seed and get your gears turning. So I have those here for us today. Things we'll be kind of thinking about, I want in your mind is, when's the right time for you to outsource certain work and really focus on the best, most exciting parts of the work that you do? And how does this align with your priorities? And because I'm an absolute sucker for sayings, I couldn't help but add a couple more here. Really determining when is the juice worth the squeeze and when are you going to be getting the biggest bang for your buck? So in my opinion here, stop outsourcing the cool and creative things that you do start outsourcing the boring work that no one else wants to do. And here at Rustici, this kind of boring work is really our specialty. We specialize in that type of boring work that no one else really wants to do. So the main points that we'll be hitting on today, like I said, we're super fortunate to have Roxanne and Anne here to share how they worked through making these decisions about when to build and when to buy at Ethena. So we'll be hearing from them some of the known versus unknown factors in making that type of investment. Really hearing about the complexity behind the scenes of what's really going on as you're developing a full learning platform. We'll hear a bit about how they leverage Rustici Software. They use our engine and cross-domain products, and even a customer story of theirs, how a leadership training company partnered with Ethena. And I'll kind of be there along the way, sharing some bits about how Rustici fits into this puzzle and recapping pros and cons at the end for each approach. So getting started here, we want to kick this off with a bit of a poll. We want to ask our audience here, just check in. Where are you in your buy versus build journey? Are you just starting to explore? Are you actively evaluating, leaning more towards building, leaning more towards buying? You've already made a decision. I'd love to hear kind of where you all are landing, what your status is for making those types of decisions. There's the poll, perfect. Got some folks that are building, cool. Cool, yeah, leaning towards building, but also thinking things like SCORM for clients who need content in their own LMSs, yep. Buying, but it's hard to find tech design for what you need. Oh, considering moving all of your custom LMS to a third party. Cool. So we've got some good perspectives here. This is cool to see because your journey can look different and it's not always a linear path. We'll talk about that a little bit today. So it's great to kind of hear where everyone is in their experiences. That's super helpful. I'm going to kick things off to Roxanne, and she's going to share her expertise from this leadership role side of things.
Definitely. This first set of frameworks may seem kind of obvious, but what we found both as a company considering, for example, leveraging software versus building it ourselves, but then also realizing that we serve clients, and maybe I'll just take a step back to explain what we do because I think it'll make this make more sense. So Ethena has our own LMS, and a lot of customers use us to manage their compliance training. Think the training that you usually don't like to do once a year, harassment prevention, code of conduct, et cetera. We sell directly to businesses. So you might be a 500-person finance company, and you just need to make sure that you're compliant with various regulations. You come to Ethena, very simple. But we also realized that we have this kind of unique position where, because we have all the infrastructure already built to be able to be a B2B training provider. If you are, say, a sales training company, if you are a leadership company, leadership training company, you're selling to other businesses, you might do some coaching as well as some asynchronous learning. And unlike our company that was built as a tech company and runs our team of engineers and product designers, one of the big decisions I've seen those clients face is, do I want to bring on a team that looks like that? Obviously, so the kind of middle bucket here of cost is a really big factor there. Like when you're hiring engineers, they're expensive, kind of no matter what route you take, whether you take like outsourced dev shop or something else. It's just not cheap. And another factor in that sort of decision is it's a little bit of to use the Amazon framework, like a one-way door. Like once you start to hire full-time employees, it's not that you need to be with them forever, right? Like people part ways, but you are incurring liability, severance. Like there's not an easy turn on and off switch, like for example, a vendor. And so I have seen clients like the one Elizabeth mentioned, a leadership training company, but it's really kind of content agnostic, again, sales training, how to be a better manager. All of these work well for this model. Come to Ethena because they say it is probably cheaper to outsource, at least in the short term. I think that I know it's on the poll, a lot of you considering leaning toward building. There's likely a cost savings there in the long term. So it's also kind of a question of what is your time horizon. We have this bucket of other business objectives. So for example, one of the clients that came to us really wanted to break into the enterprise quickly. And speed was very important for them. And so in the build versus buy journey, if speed and or breaking into the enterprise or some other business objective you might have is most important, that could really strongly influence which path you go, because if you need to quickly break into the enterprise, it's highly unlikely that you're going to be able to build something that will have all of the enterprise requirements that your potential clients may require, like SOC 2 certifications, ability to get through security review, et cetera, et cetera. And so I don't think there's necessarily a right or wrong way to make this decision. But what I've seen work best, and even when Anne and I went through this exercise in leveraging Rustici to ourselves, it's really just about being very clear about what you're optimizing for, kind of laying that all down. So whether it's cost, whether it's time, all of those factors, and then prioritizing them, because you might have 8 factors that you think are quite important, but usually it's impossible to sort of optimize for those 8 things because they often point in slightly different directions. And so being very clear about what your overarching goal is, if it is speed, time to launch, something like that, that is likely going to tilt you in the buy direction. Where if it is something like really bespoke characteristics, you want massive control and you have a longer time horizon, that's likely going to tilt you more in the build direction. Anne or Elizabeth, not sure if you have anything else you want to add here.
I definitely do, but I'm going to save it for, I believe, the next slide.
Perfect.
Okay, excellent. I really do just want to +1 the note that Roxanne ended with there, which is it's so important to understand what is most important to you in a prioritized list. There are always going to be ways to tell yourselves both the build and the buy story. It's always been true in my experience. And figuring out what is the primary thing I need to optimize for, what's something I might care about, but I care about a little less, is incredibly clarifying. So something that Elizabeth and I wanted to go over today is the fact that when you're thinking about building or buying as a technical leader, there are some considerations that you inherently have a better handle on than others, the known versus the unknown factors, as she framed it. For me, sometimes building can feel less scary. And there are a few reasons for that. There's a really known clear cost of purchasing something new. When you already have folks on staff, the sort of cost of that is a little less obvious. It's not coming in a bill that is going to your CFO or your finance department. Your internal resourcing is going to give you a very high degree of trust. You understand that you have folks who what they can do, how fast they can do it, and that's something you have a lot of confidence in. And then same deal with your tech stack. If you are building in a tech stack that you know really well, that just feels more comfortable. And so often that gives you an instinctive sort of lean towards maybe I'll just do it myself. And that's because all of the unknown consideration, things that are a little less hard to quantify, are a lot of the benefits, in my opinion, of sometimes deciding to buy. So things like opportunity trade-offs. What might your team be doing if they had more focus, more bandwidth? That can be a little harder to measure. The maintenance burden over time, right? All of us technical folks on the call know that there is no building something without maintaining it, but exactly what that maintenance is going to be, how much it's going to tax your team, well, it's difficult to know that in advance. And then, of course, surprises during development. I will be the first to admit that not every project that I've ever led has gone exactly to plan, exactly on time. I'm sure folks on the call can relate to that. And again, it's just difficult to know ahead of a project quite how many surprises you are going to hit. And so the case that I want to make here isn't that buying is always right. As Elizabeth and Roxanne mentioned, we have sometimes chosen to buy and sometimes trying to build. but that the case for buying, even when really compelling, can sometimes just be a bit sneakier, a bit less obvious. And we as technical leaders have the responsibility to look at that sort of tendency we'll have towards the comfort of building all the things that we know and understand, and really make sure that when we are deciding to build, it's a smart choice. And Elizabeth, if I could ask you to move us forward. Perfect.
Cool. Yeah. So just like Anne was saying, building is often a lot more complex than it seems. I've got a customer quote on the screen here that kind of encapsulates some of the main points that I want to kind of reiterate here. For this first part, I just want to touch on that what we provide at Rustici are really products for builders of things, for lack of a better way to describe it. Much of our solutions are kind of like plumbing. They're working behind the scenes. So we're really here positioning ourselves to support folks who are builders. We've been the leading e-learning standards experts for over 20 years now, and what we provide are really the table stakes, kind of the baseline of what you need to be able to play nicely within this e-learning world. So in a lot of cases, just to bring a product to market and sell within this industry, you've got to have standard support in one way or another. So when it comes to making decisions about building or buying, you should build the stuff that's that market differentiation, the stuff that's your special sauce. What is it that people really come to you for? Don't spend your time building the thing that's just maybe the ante to get into the game. Leave that work to someone else. And at Rustici, we really believe in trying to match your pace, your style. We are absolutely not into the high pressure sales vibe. And we really believe that you need to do what's best for you and for your team. You are the ones in the position to evaluate these things that Roxanne and Anne have mentioned. So if you land on wanting to build a solution for standard support yourselves, we'll be the first ones to happily point you in the right direction of what you can do to kind of get started. But we found that if you're taking that time, you're reflecting, you're reassessing on your priorities, what you're looking to accomplish, and all of the items that we've covered here, you might find that juice isn't really worth the squeeze for your team. And we've already built something that works behind the scenes in hundreds of LMSs around the globe. And the SCORM spec is over 1,000 pages long in teeny tiny little font. So work like building out this standard support, it's a wildly long and boring process. So we've already done that work. In our opinion, that isn't maybe the greatest use of your development time, your engineers' time building that stuff out. Really let your team shine. Let them build the next cool, exciting learning platform or the most well-rounded and really engaging content for your learners, like Ethena has done. And let us take care of that must-have, but honestly, pretty tedious and kind of unsexy part of the work. The second piece here is something that Anne definitely touched on. The second piece, that build versus buy, it's not actually the end of the decision-making process. Spoilers. It's not just that moment of, hey, let's implement standards. Now, if you build it yourself, you're having to maintain it yourself, do all the support. And that, to me, is actually maybe the more valuable part to an organization who's choosing to buy something instead of build than just the upfront ad of something like standard support. Now that you have it, you can kind of set it and forget it, spend your energy elsewhere. You don't have to worry about it too much for the most part. You don't have to spend your time, your developer's time, troubleshooting your own bespoke implementation or supporting this thing that you've built. You have partners for support that truly act kind of as an extension of your own team. I remember I once had a customer refer to our support team as white doves on a sunny day. And that really tickled me, but it sticks out in my mind. And I always remember that conversation because it showed being able to lean on a team of experts in these moments that are so crucial is just invaluable. So I'm going to pass it over here to Anne, who's going to talk a bit more specifically about Ethena and how they're leveraging and leaning on Rustici.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. And I will just say, white doves on a sunny day is a North Star for any to point at when thinking about how they're described. I love that anecdote. So as Elizabeth mentioned, we use both the engine and the cross-domain product to support our business. And I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about the areas that stand out to me most in terms of the benefits that we've gotten from choosing to buy when it came to the Elizabeth said it, I didn't unsexy 1,000-page SCORM spec. So the first is something that Roxanne mentioned a little bit when she was talking earlier. Time to live. And I want to spend a minute talking about why this was such a big deal for us. We were thinking about a new product line. And if we were going to build it ourselves, it was just going to take us longer than it was going to take if we went to Rustici and we partnered, we bought their solution and we embedded it in ours. And when we were trying out this new product, it felt way too long to take all of the time of that building, all of the resources of that building to figure out if that product was going to work. Again, I will lead with some of my mistakes. I'm sure I'm not the only technical leader here to have contributed to a product line that didn't do so well. You only find out after launch that, thank you so much for whoever just laughed. I figured I was not alone here. You put in a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, only to learn that when you put something out in market, it's, either entirely wrong or it's a little bit off the mark and you need to rejigger. And part of what we got from buying in this case was this time to learning being really quick and time to live being really quick, and thus this time to learning being really quick. We were particularly compelled by this because we wanted to understand if there was something there with this product. Obviously, we're here talking about how successful this has been for us. So certainly the answer in that case was yes. But from my perspective, there was a huge strategic advantage to being able to get that learning from the market, from being live, which there is no substitute for. No amount of research or testing is going to tell you for sure how your release is going to go, quite like releasing it. And knowing that we were then able to decide whether or not to sink more of our resources into that product line to build our special sauce on top of it, all the things that Elizabeth talked about. And so that for me was just something that was incredibly compelling. I want to pause to mention it was really compelling to my cross-functional partners too, right? I could say to our sales leader, hey, I'm going to put something in your hands. It's not a prototype. It lives, it breathes, it works. I could say to our customer success leader, hey, we can give customers demo accounts. They can try this. They can let us know what they think. We can do all of that really quickly. There was so much business value to be gained from that. The second thing I want to focus on is connected to that 1,000-page, I won't use the descriptor more than I have to, Elizabeth, 1,000-page spec that Rustici handles for you. We knew that there were a lot of edge cases in the LMS interoperability standards. And we had the right skills on our team, learned the nooks and crannies of all of them. But there was a lot of focus and peace of mind to be gained from using a partner that had figured all of that out. And to harken back to that theme of the difference between sort of understanding something hypothetically, researching, and then building something and putting it out live, we all know that learning from a spec is not nearly as effective as learning from having something that is deployed, that is out in front of people, that benefits from folks catching bugs, explaining use cases to you that the spec doesn't necessarily make as clear, but that they do all the time. And we really wanted to benefit from someone who had not only read every line of the spec, but had years of seeing how that spec comes to life and knew all of those edge and corner cases. As Roxanne mentioned, we sell to some really sophisticated enterprise customers, and we did not want to be caught on our back foot, even with a new product line, saying, ooh, that didn't behave exactly how you expected across all the different systems that you use. Yikes, let us fix that. We wanted a better guarantee that all of those things had been ironed out. And then third, this is a theme that has come up again and again. It's because it's a really, really big one. Being able to focus our development resources on what we do best was a huge, huge value add for us. We have things that we can do uniquely. SCORM and interoperability standards, that wasn't it for us. And we really did want to be able to dig in on the areas that we believed we could do something unique, building out our training software on top of that, for which the SCORM standard was a bedrock, the ante, as Elizabeth put it, but not the whole picture. And one of the things I want to talk through here, this was something that I think I actually underestimated before we bought. I knew that focus would be good, but it is more powerful sometimes even than we realize when we're thinking about it. The fact that you could have an entire team focused on something they're doing with no, hey, we just got to have that meeting on the side to discuss something that's not our core effort, really is a multiplicative force for how much you can get done, how well you can do it. And something that, looking back on our decision to buy here, I think I saw the benefit ahead, but I didn't realize quite the magnitude of benefit we were going to get from that focus, and is something that anyone here who is thinking about buying more of what they're doing today, I hope that you really sort of sit with how much it can do to be able to give your smart, talented team members one thing to run at one time. And with that, I believe I'm going to pass things to Roxanne to talk about our customer who decided to buy instead of build.
That is correct. And in case that it is ever helpful in making your pitch to, for example, your leadership team about which decision you want to go, I think there's also some psychology at play here. So as I was listening to Anne describe these decisions, I think that there is a big difference in how non-technical folks think about the benefits of focus. So that's, not because I don't tend to see the distraction on a product roadmap as viscerally, not something I see. And so I think really making that point clear to your leadership team. I really overlook the cost of maintenance. I think about a build and not a maintain every time. But on the flip side, something that I'm much closer to might be, for example, like special skill sets, which will lead perfectly into this slide here. So for example, I realized that we, Ethena, have built up a motion for recruiting technical talent. But we, have not, built up a motion for recruiting hardware engineers because we don't make hardware. And so if suddenly, Anne said, guess what, we need to go get 5 hardware engineers, I would realize, oh, this is like a whole, there's not just that task, there's a bunch of ancillary tasks that go with that. And I think sometimes just spelling that out for leadership can be really powerful because they don't always see those details, especially if the work stream is not as close to them. Thankfully, this particular client did see all of those pain points. So here I'm talking about the example of a leadership training company. So, think someone who can help your team more effectively communicate, help your managers better manage their teams, all of that. And they ended up white labeling our LMS. So at the beginning, I talked about how most of our customers are just your HR compliance people who need to get their companies compliant with various training regulations. But we essentially have this LMS in a box for which you can put any content. It could be, how to train your child to sleep if you wanted to, into our platform, because the platform itself is, of course, agnostic. And so this particular leadership training company realized first that they would be saving a lot of money versus an in-house build. And that savings came primarily from the fact that, as I'm sure you all know, tech companies are 80% plus headcount costs. And the headcounts of the people you need to build in-house are very specific. They're engineers, and salaries sort of only go in one direction, which is up. And so there was just this recognition from this client of ours that it would be very expensive to amass the number of people you would need to ship something very quickly, because then you would be sort of stuck with this headcount that you might not need over time. You just don't have a lot of flexibility. So cost was a huge component for them. I think we've really hit on this point, but their special sauce was more things like producing amazing live workshops, making incredible training, really dazzling their customers with their leadership training experience. Their special sauce was not creating an LMS and account provisioning and all of those details. And so this client recognized the importance of being able to focus their team's effort on the thing that really made their company sing, and not having to divide the focus into a bunch of ancillary work streams that just weren't their main effort. And the last point I touched on earlier, but it really is complicated to be enterprise ready out of the gate. When Anne and I started Ethena years ago, we weren't able to serve the enterprise, right? As 6-month-old company, there's a bunch of things an enterprise client is going to ask you for that it is really, really difficult to have at the ready at such an early age. And so if you're going on this build versus buy journey and you pick build, but you also want to be enterprise ready right away, that's a real tension, because it's just really difficult to be able to build that amount of scale and redundancy and structure, go through all of your certifications instantly. And so I think that in particular, and there might be a variety of versions of this that I'm not as familiar with. I saw folks in the chat from academia, for example, maybe there's similar complex requirements there. But I think really having an understanding of what does it take to not just bring a product to market, but actually get it through procurement is there's a bunch of complexity that hides over there as well. And I think I'm turning it over to Elizabeth. Is that right?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you all so much for walking through all of this. We're kind of at our point here to spend a moment recapping the options that you've got here. So I've got a visual here. What we've been talking about today is that we want you all to be able to evaluate what's right for you. What's the best decision, or what are the best decisions for your organization? So key considerations when you're looking to build or to buy, we've got outlined here on this chart, the things you're really going to be looking at, weighing your cost and your resources, the level of control that you want, the time that you have to market, things like maintenance and support burdens, and also your competitive advantage. So you can see how kind of on both sides of things, with buying or with building, there's, pros and cons to each of those within each of these categories here. So I've got another Ask the Audience question here. We've got another poll. I just want to know how y'all are feeling about making your decisions on buying and building. Are you less skeptical about buying after our conversation today? How are your feelings? How are you feeling about that now after talking through some of this? Oh, and the 3-bar icon is where the polls are, if it's hard to find. Yep, that's it. That's me. So you guys should be seeing that. Waiting for the results to come in. I'm anxious to see how folks are feeling, because it looked like from the beginning, we had a good amount of people that were really just starting this process in the beginning stages of exploring, and some that are more actively evaluating. And between building and buying, it seemed like we had a few more that were leaning towards the building side of things. So I'll be interested to see how folks are feeling. How long it'll be live for. There we go. Cool. So it looks like we've got some folks that are feeling less skeptical, maybe not largely so, maybe just a little bit here, still in that exploring stage, same as before, and really just not sure. And that's okay. I think, if anything, what we've kind of heard today is that your process isn't always going to just be a straight shot linear. You're going to be in this evaluation phase at several different points throughout your process. You may make one decision and realize, ooh, maybe we need to pivot. It happens. I'm going to hop over. We have another graphic that I just kind of want to walk through here about this journey that you all are on with determining whether to build or buy, but it really may evolve around the as you're going through the process. It'll change along the way. So that first step that we covered at the very beginning is that discovery, identifying your goals, like Roxanne was talking about, beginning with your end in mind. What are you looking to accomplish? And then you're starting to more clearly define the scope of your work, which Anne sort of touched on, identifying your strengths and weaknesses. What's the best use of your time? What are your high priorities here? And then you're going to dig into the phase that I think many of you are in today, which is looking at options for buying, options for building, just really exploring what's available for you. And then we're at that last part here. You'll stop, take a beat, reflect, as all good decision makers are doing. Did we make the right choices? What is our best next step? And reassess along the way. So you may circle back to the beginning, revisit your priorities, always remembering that end goal, keeping that end in mind all along the way. Always being willing to revisit your why. What is your why? What are your priorities? And then finally, kind of heading into our closing here, we'd love to answer any questions that you may have for us. Our philosophy at Rustici is pretty wide open. Ask us anything, really. We've got some contact info on the screen as well if you'd like to reach out to any of us directly. We've got info@rusticisoftware.com and info@goethena.com if you'd like to reach out to either team directly. But I'll hush for a moment and see if we've got any questions coming through. We're happy to try to help while we're here. All right. What would it take, Chris asks, what would it take to decide to switch to a generic LMS? Or is there no going back once you've done that?
And I feel like of the two of us, you might be better equipped to answer
I
this.
would be glad to give my perspective, and then I want to make sure that I give Elizabeth a chance to answer too, because I think this will definitely touch on some of her experiences. So Chris, you are rightly identifying that we built our own LMS on top of Rustici's engine. And for us, I would say, of course, there is a going back. I want to go back to Roxanne's, one-way versus two-way door framework from earlier. Absolutely, there are circumstances that I could imagine where we might decide to go back. I can talk through what those are, but the cost of doing that would be really high, huge migrations, having to totally rethink our team structure. So the short answer is it's possible, but of course, high cost and unlikely. To try to give a little bit more color as to what I think could cause us to do that, I would say it would have to be a really big shift in business strategy. And I think this is connected to where we opened the conversation. For us, for the business that we're operating, for our customer goals, building our own LMS was really the right choice for us. It's difficult for me to imagine that with our sort of overall strategic business direction staying steady, that we would ever back off of that decision. It really would have to come from a sort of top-down, high-level shift in strategy about what we wanted to sell or who we wanted to sell to. And then Elizabeth, let me pass the mic to you, since I'm sure you've got examples collected across a lot of your customers here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I'm largely going to echo some of the same things you were saying. I think it's going to depend on you, your organization, your situation. What is your why? What is your most important work that you're really focusing on? And that's really how you're going to be making these decisions. What is the best way to utilize the time that you've got? Is it maintaining your own learning platform, or is it utilizing one that's already kind of off the shelf for you to use? So it's a decision that's kind of best made in reflecting back to your why, your priorities, the skills and strengths of your team as well. But definitely things worth considering and kind of digging into. If you want to talk more about that, definitely shoot us an email. We can dig in more to your specific situation. We've got a question from Carly here. I'm curious, how do you all present your training products and the tech behind them to customers in a way that it is clear and compelling?
Great question. We aim for it to be clear and compelling, but I'm not sure we always get there. But what we, excuse me, aim to do is on our website, we really orient everything toward the customer that is buying our compliance products. So they are typically the persona of HR or compliance or legal. And so we tried to break things down because there's a distinction between buying our content and putting it into, for example, your LMS versus buying our content and deploying it natively on our LMS. And so that's one big distinction. And even in, making that distinction, there's a bit of complexity and people can get confused. And so we deploy a sales motion to try to be really clear in understanding a customer's needs. Why might you need just our SCORM files? Why might you want our training on our platform? And then we have even a bunch of ancillary products that aren't terribly relevant for this webinar, but phishing simulator, employee hotline. And so we're also using those sales calls to understand, might you also need those other products too? For the white labeled LMS, that we have not found a way yet to sort of really succinctly explain that offering. It's a little bit like unique in the market. And instead it's been much more kind of idiosyncratic. If we just happen to come across someone who has that need, we're taking a lot more time in a very consultative and technical sales process to understand all of the factors we've been talking about. What are their goals? What are the technical specifications that they have? And being really clear about whether we can or can't serve them, because it's just such a complex, it's really us needing to get to know their business versus if you're an HR person at a 500-person company. At this point, we just serve so many folks like that we typically have a really good understanding from the outside about what you're going to need. And it's almost going through a checklist. That's not to say it's easy, but there's just much more of an easy flow to follow. Whereas this is like all the factors we've been talking about. It's just so complex. It depends on what your goals are and timeline and all of that. And so long-winded way of saying it's a very consultative sales process that involves a lot of technical scoping and specifications.
Take a look here. I've got another question here. This one's for Anne. You've talked a bit about your decision to buy. Can you talk through maybe a really compelling use case to build instead of buy?
Yeah, for sure. For me, I think the best example of a decision where we built and we are really happy that we built is our proprietary content management system. So in our direct business where we are selling our training and or our tech to HR or compliance buyers like Roxanne was talking about, we develop all of that training in-house. Our amazing learning experience team takes care of that. And this for us was one of the, as you put it, Elizabeth, special sauce components of our business. And we had a lot of ideas about how effective compliance training should be built, what it should look like, how we could leverage technology to achieve that vision. And we really did not find that the content management systems on the market would allow us to achieve that vision. And so for us, this was one of our sort of core strengths, special focus areas, and building it, while it absolutely has been and continues to be resource intensive, has provided us a really meaningful competitive edge in the market. And so putting resources into that has felt absolutely reasonable. And it's something that has a really compelling ROI for us. I think it just goes back to that framework, that paradigm that Elizabeth introduced earlier of, is it something that is going to differentiate you? Okay, that's probably an area to build. You have unique ideas about how something should be done. You may need to surface those ideas yourself. Are you doing something instead that is a table stakes, has to get done, standard part of your product? That's a really interesting opportunity to buy and to benefit from someone else's expertise and all of the savings that you get there.
Yeah, thanks, Anne. That definitely reminds me of something we're always, saying at Rustici. It's, we're hiring smart people. Let them do their things. Really focus on your strengths and what you've got available here. We've got a question from Mark here. Can Ethena discuss the capabilities of their LMS's assignment automation? What degree of customization is available regarding attributes used to assign training, similar with regard to de-assignment?
Man, Mark, we need you to come on our sales calls and ask this question. This is something that we are so proud of. And in fact, it lets me sort of double down on this theme we've been circling around what's your special sauce, what's not. Obviously, assignment logic is at the core of any LMS. There's not an LMS out there that can't assign content to learners and can't do so to some extent based on differences in those learners, what job they do, et cetera. For us, we needed a particularly specialized version of this for the compliance use case, our direct sale use case, because managing compliance training at scale is really complex. And we wanted to be able to automate away a bunch of the complexity of managing compliance training specifically for our buyers. So let me talk you all through an example. I bet many folks on the call have taken mandatory harassment prevention training at some point. The regulatory environment for harassment prevention training is actually state by state, not federal and country by country. India has different regulations than not just than the US does, than Chicago does, than the state of Illinois does, than New York does. And we wanted to be able to offer a software product, an LMS, to our customers that took all of that complexity away from them, where we could say, hey, not only have we developed best-in-class training content, but if you hook up your HR information system, so think payroll system, Workday, something of the like, you connect it to our specialized LMS, we are going to handle for you all of the assignment of what someone needs based on the law, based on the statutory requirements, and based on the information that we know about them from that HR information system. It also handles de-assignment. So that is use cases like I have moved to, a state that has less burdensome requirements, and I want my system to automatically recognize that. We handle that as well. So for us, that was part of the story of why did we not white label an LMS? What are the kinds of things that we wanted to have control over for our particular business use case? And so it's something we've invested a lot in and continue to invest in.
Thanks. I think we've got another one that has come through for Roxanne specifically. How do you, as the CEO, handle someone asking for budget for a project?
I tend to divide expenses into two categories in my head. One is like recurring with a lot of strings attached, and the other is a bit more flexible. If it's flexible spend, I'm just naturally a bit more inclined to approve because I don't, it doesn't feel like it requires as much of a really weighty decision, because if it doesn't work, you can always just kind of cut ties quickly. This is maybe a too simplistic of an example, but someone wanted to bring on a trainer for one of our folks in the commercial team, and it's essentially kind of like one-time costs. It's going to be a couple of month engagement. So my thought is there generally, as long as there's sound business case, I don't feel like I need to really kick the tires on that, because if it doesn't work, we have only lost X number of dollars, and we can make a different decision very quickly. If someone is making a decision for headcount at this point in the company's life, we have a pretty sophisticated process for going through that approval. And that is the most onerous process we have, because headcount is, it comes with a bunch of both amazing things, talent, but also just like costs, right? That are ongoing, that are, again, the risk-based benefits. Are you opening up a different nexus in a different state? Like anything that is people related, that is full-time employment, goes into the on the opposite end of the spectrum, the most the bucket that I'm going to scrutinize the most heavily. And then things in between tend to be like software products. So I know that once you get something, you typically keep it. And so I don't want to just willy-nilly be greenlighting these sorts of things. But I tend to have a little bit more of a comfort with that versus full-time employee. And then this wasn't asked, but I'll just toss in case helpful. I know a lot of CEOs are speaking about this either privately or publicly, have definitely started to change my perspective a bit more with all of the AI tools that are coming out there, and wanting to make sure that the justification for us really needing to, especially in headcount land, to bring on an additional cost is true, and that there isn't some way for us to do something faster, more automated, more streamlined using AI tools. That's my kind of very high level framework.
Cool. That's super helpful. I appreciate that breakdown from my perspective. I'm not in that position. That's cool.
Totally.
I'll give another moment here just to see if there's any other questions that trickle in. really appreciate the questions that have already come through. I really appreciate the engagement and really valuable questions to add to this conversation. Like we mentioned earlier, if something comes up, I know I think of all of my best questions after I'm not in a conversation anymore. So if any questions come up in the next, few days or so, or anytime really, please feel free to reach out to us. Ask us anything really. If you've got questions for the Rustici team, hit us up at info@rustici.software.com. The Ethena team is also here to support if you've got any questions directly for them. I know sometimes it's maybe hard to ask in a public forum here. So info@goethena.com will be the way that you can reach our awesome presenters, Anne and Roxanne, to be able to help out. And I think if we've got no other questions here, I've got one more. Chris says, I'm interested in the business model for Ethena, hosting content for clients or serving it to their LMS. Which did you start with?
I'm happy to take a stab at this, Roxanne, and please add on anything that I missed. So no, that's okay. I'm really happy to discuss it. So we did begin with offering an all-in-one training content and training tech suite. And for us, the story on that was really connected to wanting, I would say having a vision for effective training that tied together advantages from tech and some ideas about how content could be developed really effectively. Additionally, we knew that building out compatibility with, to being able to do that, and then also building out SCORM compatibility was going to tax our roadmap. So that was actually a big part of starting with the whole platform first, was saying, we think that there are some really unique things we can do if we have our own content management system, if we have our own LMS. We want to put that out there and see how customers respond. And also dealing with the SCORM compatibility, important, but a second priority to that. And so we had this really exciting market response from the first product that we deployed, but we did absolutely have customers coming through saying, I love what you do. I've already got an LMS. Either it doesn't work for me, but I'm in a contract, or it works great for me. I'm really happy with it. And I'm okay not benefiting from 100% of the things that you get with your bundled offering. I would still love some of the things that I can get as someone just using your SCORM files. Do you have them? And we got pretty darn tired of telling customers that we didn't offer that. And the only thing that was available was the all-in-one platform. So we then started selling our content as a standalone product. I would say we still sell both with a lot of frequency today. There are absolutely customers for whom that bundled offering is the right thing, even with the SCORM offering available. But for Roxanne and me, that flexibility of understanding what does the customer need, what is going to serve that specific customer best, has been a huge advantage over just having to say, hey, the only way to do this is the 100% full throttle on our LMS offering.
Cool. Awesome. That's good to hear too, you talking through that use case, because that's kind of how we build our roadmaps for things at Rustici as well. You start hearing things over and over, and you're in the position you only want to say no so many times before you think, ooh, maybe can this no turn into a yes? How can we make that work? What's involved here? So that was a great question, Chris. Thanks for asking that.
Really well, Elizabeth. I'm going to borrow that.
Good deal. Well, thanks, y'all. It looks like we're just a few minutes here from close. As like I mentioned, as any questions come up, anything y'all think of after this, after everything kind of melds together, definitely please feel free to reach out to us. We will have, it's Tuesday. By the end of the week, we should have the slideshow and the recording of the entire webinar sent out to you all as well to be able to have as a resource. Thank you so much for being here, and a big thank you, Roxanne and Anne, for joining us and sharing your story, sharing your expertise. It's just been invaluable.
Thank you so much for having us, and for everyone for asking such thoughtful questions.
Yeah, thanks so much, folks.